in serving that way. We ministered to the church on Sunday morning, and then we also offered youth group on Wednesday evening, and that is the very first time that they've actually had youth group there. So that was really cool. We had 6 teenagers who came and joined us, and I thought that was a really good thing. A group, I hope that you'll hear this as the night goes on. Our group was very well received by this church family and community. I heard a number of times about how thankful the community was and the church family was to have us come and serve their town. Matter of fact, they were somewhat baffled as to why we would come to Bliss, Idaho. The greater the need is, the greater the sense of accomplishment. And that results in a greater sense of purpose and a greater sense of appreciation too. By the end of the week, we had at least 4 first-time decisions for Christ, as well as at least 4 rededications to Christ, which made our trip well worth it. You, our church family, sent us, and we are grateful for the opportunity to go. This evening, you'll hear from the team little snippets about our time in Bliss. So without further ado, I'm going to allow the team to share, just from their perspective, our time in Bliss. All right. So Ben and whoever comes up, come up with them. I'm not sure if it's just going to be Ben or if there's a couple more. All right. Ben, you're on first.
Hi there. So I'm Ben, and I just want to start it off by saying that it's such a blessing to go and teach these kids about God's word. With that, these kids were so eager to learn God's verses that we were teaching them every day. It was kind of cool because at the end of each soccer camp day, we had Mega come up, which was Tyler Ferguson here, and he would ask them questions, and the last question would be, who knows the daily verse? And almost all the kids, I would probably say about 3/4 or a little even more than that, raised our hands and knew it. Probably not word for word, but close to it. So that was really cool to see that what we taught them that day, they actually knew. And the verse wasn't actually the verse wasn't even close to the last section of the day. So it's probably an hour and a half, 2 hours before we closed. So that was really cool to see. It was really fun to bond with the kids every afternoon at lunch. So the church hosted a free lunch for all the kids that would come to the VBS from the school nearby and for all us leaders. And that was we're so grateful for that. So we not only bonded with the kids from our groups, so we had 4 groups and we were able to bond with each kid or every kid from different groups. So that was really cool to see and to hear their background stories. So that was really fun. It was really interesting. Not all the kids were from Bliss. Like most of them actually were from Gooding, which was a nearby city. So that was really interesting to learn about them. And then it was really cool to see the enthusiasm of the kids every day. So the beginning of the day, we did songs. And at the end of the week, almost all the kids do the motions. So Mrs. West invited like few kids up for every song, and then they were doing all the motions. So that was really fun to see. And some of those motions were actually pretty hard. Like not us leaders actually knew them by the end of the week either. So that was really fun to see. So I got a funny story for you guys. So, I mean, I had to say a funny story. It was kind of fun. So there's these older kids, and I thought I really knew soccer. Like I could be a good goalie. So after I was done eating, and then there are I think there are like 3 older kids that were high school or 8th grade, and then there's this little kid named Diego, and I think he was 6th grade. Impressive, pretty impressive. Sixth grade, and so they're probably about 15 feet away from me, and I'm standing in front of the goal. I'm like, okay, guys, give me your best shot. I'm ready for anything. So I'm standing there. Oh wait, I have to do the W because that's what we learned at camp. And then they shot, and I was not ready for that ball. It went right by there, and then I lunged for it, and I was probably 3 seconds off. Pretty bad. And then I'm like, okay, guys, That was not, that did not count. So, okay, so they backed up probably like 4 feet more, and they gave me their shot. And it went right above my head. And you guys know I'm pretty tall, and I can probably touch the top of the goal line, or goal top. So I dive or jump for it, and then it hits my fingers, and it slides right through. I'm like, guys, you guys can do that to your leaders. I think I'm done. So that was really fun to see. Those kids laughed at me. It was not funny. And it's kind of funny because Emma posted and encouraged it. She was like, really, you're playing with these older kids? I'm like, yeah, I'm older like these kids, and I will play with them. So that was kind of fun to see. So thank you guys. Thanks for praying for us. That we really needed your prayer, and I think it really impacted the city or the town that we went to. So thank you.
Oh, okay, like Ben said, these kids were really, really good at soccer, and it was fun playing with them, and it was also challenging for me, and I learned a lot. Okay, so what I was gonna touch on was some things that I found different about this missions trip than any other missions trip, and that's like aside from the fact that we were in rural Idaho, like in the middle of nowhere, which is actually pretty cool, and I loved it by the end. But what I was gonna say was this missions trip, like the other ones were the kids. They were typically kids that were from church homes and had heard the gospel and such. But at this missions trips, the kids hadn't. Like a lot of the kids I talked to had never heard the gospel and knew nothing about the Lord, which was a challenge for a lot of us leaders. And to be able to share the gospel with them firsthand and for the first time them hearing it was really, really cool. And to be able to see the excitement in their face, like people always talk about the excitement of Christ and such when someone hears it for the first time. And I'd honestly never seen that before. And with these kids, I really did. And it was super, super cool. And after one of the kids accepted Christ, Titan, and he preferred to be called John Cena, which is kind of his camp nickname. But after he accepted Christ, I asked him, I was like, Titan, do you have a Bible at home? He's like, no, I don't. And I was like, do you want one? He's like, a Holy Bible? And I was like, yeah, a Holy Bible. And he was so stoked. And so the next day, I talked to Pastor Nate and the Pastor Bob of the church, and he got him one. And then he like ran around and wanted all the coaches to sign his Bible for him. And it just reminded me that even though, most of us have grown up in the church home and we're Christians, we should still have that enthusiasm and excitement for Christ. And that just, reminded me of that. And I hope that throughout my life, I am continually reminded of that. So that's it.
Patience? I thought we were the same height. I'm learning something new now. All right, so my name's Alyssa, and I would like to share something with you all that I was really challenged with on this missions trip. At the beginning of this week, well, actually before I hit that, so there's quite a few seniors on this missions trip. So I think we all kind of felt like a little bit of this expectation of, oh, we better make this one good. If God starts speaking to me, I better apply it. Not like it's any more important on the other ones, but apparently being a senior, you better get it this time. And God really did challenge me. Towards the beginning of the week, as we're starting our week out, I found myself getting very distracted. I was getting very caught up in myself. I was thinking about all the stresses here at home. With the pressure of being a senior, you start thinking about, does God really have my future? So these truths, God has it, he'll give you peace about it. Well, not if you don't bring it to him. And I wrestled with that for a good portion of the week. And kind of, I'm ashamed to admit, it wasn't until probably the Thursday of that week when Pastor Nate had us, because he mentioned that we did service projects in the morning, that I didn't actually bring it to God. We had devotions that morning, and we all kind of separated out as best we could to go spend some alone time with God. And that wasn't that, I really needed that. I needed to bring it to him. I was stressed out, and because I was stressed out, I wasn't there for the kids. I wasn't there to love on them, which is all they wanted. I think this whole team would probably say all those kids wanted was someone to care and someone to show Christ's love to them. And if I wasn't at my best, how was I supposed to go, oh, you're struggling at your You're struggling in your home. You need to take that to God. Let's do some self-reflection there. Have you brought what you're struggling with to God? Nope. So on Thursday, I did that, and God gave me an overwhelming sense of peace with it. And I was very thankful that he gave me a group that I could actually process with, and they could actually help me through it as long as I would let them. There's always that. But my stubbornness made a little problem that I could have just brought to God a bigger problem. And I kind of felt like I wasn't reaching the kids. And then God does really cool things on Thursday. And we were supposed to present the wordless book. And I was able to talk with 2 boys in our group, and they rededicated their lives to Christ. So then I realized, oh, I could have done this sooner. God uses you, and he works through you, but not if you don't let him. If you put up, you can be your biggest roadblock. I think if there's something he brought to my attention was, sometimes it's not your circumstances that are your roadblocks. It's not the difficult kids. It's not the tiny little town where we're pinging back between 2 gas stations and we know the difference between the 2 items in the gas stations and what the prices are. Sometimes it's not that, and sometimes it's even struggles in our group. Sometimes it's yourself. Sometimes you're your roadblock. And God really presented that to me. And he helped me work through the portions of it that I'm dealing with right now, and I don't think I'm done with that. But he definitely gave me a sense of peace, and I've had more peace since I got home. And I kind of learned my lesson of, if you're wrestling with something, bring it to me now. I can help you. You can't do this by yourself. So God really challenged me, but I'm thankful that he helped me when I called out to him, and God is greater than your problems, and he's greater than you.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Jordan. The time that I had in Bliss was an amazing experience. I can say that I grew in my faith, and that was what I was wanting in the first place. It was definitely very hard for me emotionally, but then finally on Thursday, I got time alone with God. I read out of his word and wrote and underlined verses that I thought applied to me at that time. I read out of Matthew. Matthew 6:25-34 was a good reminder for me to not to worry and to put all my trust and hope in God. After that time with him, I was refreshed and could go through everything that came my way. Before the mission trip, I was wondering if I would connect with any 2nd or 3rd grader, and God answered that right away. A 2nd grader named Paige became my friend. She is already a Christian, but it was really cool seeing her grow in her faith and also just to get to know her. I am glad that we are still connected, and she is soon going to send me a letter. The week I had in Bliss was definitely bittersweet, but it was a great experience. Bliss may be a small town with only 318 people, but it had a great impact on my life.
Hi, I am Luke West, and I was working with the kindergarten and 1st graders, and as the rest of my group will agree, we had a very interesting time with them. For us, the first day of soccer camp was interesting, especially during the lesson time. The kids were not very responsive at all. They were distracted the entire time, so we couldn't really tell if they were listening or understanding what we were trying to teach them. And that basically didn't change all week, which was pretty discouraging to say the least. Over the week, at the evening debriefings, all of the other groups were like, yeah, our kids seem more spiritually aware today. And me and Farron would send glances across the room like, not our group. So basically, it seemed like we were accomplishing nothing. Then on Tuesday at the lunch they held before the camp started, Pastor Nate told me to sit next to a kid who was new that day and was a little nervous. His name was Emmett. We got along pretty well because we both like making weird faces. and I was the only male leader in my group. Anyways, he was a little rowdy, but overall we got along pretty well. His mom was one of the ladies who helped with the lunch there, so we saw her pretty often. And every time she saw me, she would thank me over and over again for being with Emmett. And every time. It wasn't just Emmett's mom either. Almost every time any mom saw me with their kid, they would thank me over and over for just watching their kid. They were also grateful that a bunch of teenagers from Oregon would come to their little town of Bliss, Idaho just to spend time with their kids. Later on in the week, Emmett's mom told Katie that Emmett has been through a lot, like more than I have in my life. So even if our kids learned nothing, that wasn't the only reason we were there. We were also there for the parents and the whole community, and I definitely think we impacted them.
Sorry. All right. Hey, I'm Joe. And I just cut Trevor, so he's next. I'm going to be talking about what I was challenged with mainly, and then some about the kids. So at the beginning of the week, I feel like I should challenge myself to not complain during it, because it really doesn't, I feel it really doesn't help anything. So as the week went on, I worked on not playing, and I found that it really helped me to keep my focus on the kids and what we were there to do. And it really helped me build relationships with the kids. I had the second and third graders, and they actually, I thought they were really responsive. They actually weren't super interested in soccer. We had like 2 kids who actually wanted to play soccer, but we would get to memory verse, and they would be jumping up and down and trying to see who could recite it the first, like on their own the first time. And that was really encouraging throughout the week. My challenge wasn't as much just getting the kids to be into it. It was more keeping up with the kids, like, because the whole week they were ready to go, and it was really encouraging, and I appreciated that. Also, the parents too, as you guys heard from everybody else, they're always really helpful. We had some moms of the kids there, and they would watch, but it was really nice how they would they're always there. Like some kids, you know, they have their breakdowns, and they would help us, but they weren't like hovering too much, which is kind of nice sometimes. But so throughout the week, our group had one girl come to Christ, Melina, and another girl named Samantha. She didn't come to Christ, but I think we really planted a seed in her, because she let me see, Thursday she was she was thinking about it, and then Friday she didn't really decide yet. So something pray about, but I think it was really cool to see how these kids respond to it, and the seeds, I think we planted a lot of seeds and brought some people to the Lord. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Trevor Cross. I'm a freshman, or was a freshman, so this is my first mission trip I've ever been on. I worked with the second and third graders at the camp with Joe and some other people. It went pretty well. Why are you laughing? Okay. It went pretty well, but first mission trip, it's hard to know what to expect exactly. And there were some things that I didn't really know what was going to happen, and it went pretty well though. For example, like Joe was saying, a lot of the kids didn't want to play soccer, so I don't know. I wasn't expecting that. I know we were more thinking going into the week that we would have trouble because we weren't very good at soccer. But it turns out we didn't do a lot of that. We ended up playing different games like tag and some other games. And although they didn't want to play soccer, they did listen to us. They listened to us very well. And they did everything else we asked them to do. And they memorized verses really well and stuff. I guess No. I did very, very well. So let's see. I'm good. Okay. So I guess the main point of this was even if they didn't learn how to play soccer, they learned about God's love. And that's the reason we went there. I feel like it doesn't really matter about the soccer so much as just being there for them and showing them God's love.
Okay. I'm Julie West. I'm not one of the teenagers. One of the chaperones. And I just love traveling with Pastor Nate and all the kids. It's just a blessing to me. And so I'm going to share some blessings. Some blessings. Okay, these are some blessings I had in Bliss. Okay, and they're not necessarily in any order. I saved my favorite ones for the last. So. Laughing late at night with Kelsey and Carrie. Keeping the girls awake. They got mad at us. Anyway, that was really fun. Then the second day, this was only the second day at the end of our time. They told you I did the music and stuff. One of the little girls came up to me. She threw her arms around me and said, "I love you." I'm like, "Oh, I love you too." And that was only the second day. They were just so affectionate and so wanting and needing affection and love. Then along that line, watching the teenagers and the kids sing the songs and do the motions and have a good time. That is just a blessing to me. And we just had a fun time praising the Lord. Even the teenagers in the back, who not these teenagers, but the Bliss teenagers who thought they were too cool, by the end of the week, they were clapping at least. So that's good. Another blessing was circle time. I call it circle time debriefing we had every evening. Where we shared about the day and hearing the kids encourage each other. Pastor Nate gave them an opportunity to say a kind word about someone else that they saw in the group. And that was just huge, hearing them encourage and compliment each other, and then praying for each other and praying for the kids that were coming to camp. Pastor Bob, those village missionaries are wonderful. They're wonderful. They love you, and they are so open and accepting. And we love Pastor Bob. My two biggest blessings were watching these teenagers interact with the kids that came to camp, and just seeing them bond and love them, even if they were kind of dirty or sopping wet from playing outside and other reasons, and just your patience with all those kids. And you'll never know. Being a parent, you don't realize until you're a parent how much kids soak up. And they soaked up a lot of love from you guys, and I just appreciate that. That was a blessing to me, and it was a blessing to them. And that leads right into my other favorite one, was hearing the other moms talk, like Luke said, in the background, and telling me over and over again, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for talking and to these kids about Jesus." To them, some of these kids, the fact that they actually came and sat and listened to the Bible was huge. That was just kind of unheard of almost. They do it every Friday. They do free lunch for the school kids, because the school is right next door to the church. And actually all three schools are right next door to the church. And they're all little. It's just really neat. And they come over on Fridays and have lunch, and they have not been able to share Bible stories or anything with them because they had no interest in staying and listening to scripture and the Bible. And so those moms just really appreciated that and felt like, I think it was the connection of seeing other kids doing that brought them. And one final story, a little kindergartner, actually he was the kindergartners we hadn't been in kindergarten yet. Okay, so these were really little. And some of them had never been in an organized Sunday school type thing ever. And it was obvious. But his name was Lucas, and his mom, I think she said she grew up in that area, then moved away, and now they've been back. They just moved back really recently. Weren't sure what they were going to do, if they were going to stay or not sure what they were going to do. She brought Lucas. She had a little younger one too. His first time ever in anything like this. And over and over she said, oh, he is so neat. He goes home and he doesn't sing when we're there, but he sings at home. He sings the songs at home. And she said it just meant a lot to him and a lot to her. So at the end of the week, I happened to be in the parking lot when she was driving off, and I said, God bless you as you figure out what you want to do, because her husband's traveling for work and they weren't sure. I said, I just pray God's blessings on you. And she said, I feel a calling now to stay here, she said. And I think it was because of the sense of community that she had with our group reaching out to their community. And then later on in that evening, Pastor Bob said that she told him she was going to come to church on Sunday. So things like that. And that is what the goal of these trips is, to reach children for Christ, but also their families, and affect the community. And so I know this group did that. I'm proud of you guys, and all of you out there. Thank you for your prayers, and you should be very proud of them too.
When I got to Bliss, I faced a lot of trouble with being distracted. I'm tempted to give into R&R a lot, and my R&Rs are recycling and rocks. They had rocks everywhere there, cool rocks. In fact, I've got some in my pocket. And I was constantly out in the parking lot seeing all their rocks that they made their parking lot with, and picking them up and, I want to take this one home. Can I have that one? And they don't care about their rocks there. They'd give me their whole parking lot if they could. But then Pastor Nate, on, I think it was Friday, the lesson was on distraction and how you're here for a purpose. It's not rocks, and it's not the recycling that you keep doing. It's something bigger than that. And think about what you're here for, and the focus that we're to have. And so I think it was Friday that finally I got that message, and I had to turn my iPod off and quit running over to the high school next door and getting Wi-Fi, and get on task and do what we were there to do. And that's not only a message that is for this missions trip, it's something that we have to do with our whole life, is to be on task doing what God has called us to do. And so that was my challenge for the week, and maybe it'll be for the rest of my life here. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Hannah Connolly, and I want to share something that challenged me over this past week in Bliss, Idaho. And something that challenged me was being able to connect with the kids. And but by the second day of VBS, I was able to connect with all the little kids there. I'm so grateful for all the leaders and coaches that we had in our second and third graders. And I was especially able to connect with these two little kids, Diego and Milena. As you heard, Milena was I was able to lead Milena to Christ on Thursday. But the cool thing is that that whole Thursday day, Pastor Nate was telling us before we got there that these kids would not be clingy or would never want to sit on our laps or anything like that. But this girl was on my back, I swear, for 3 hours straight. And I really loved it. And I was like, I need to take a break. So I sat her down and I'm like, do you want to look at one of my favorite books? And I showed her the Wordless book, and I went through that with her, and I talked to her about the Bible. And then I asked her if she wanted to accept Jesus into her heart. And she said, but she wouldn't pray for herself. And she said, can you pray for me? So I prayed for her. And I thought that was really cool. And I feel like I was really blessed to be able to go to Bliss as my second time on a mission trip. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Dressel, and I was going to share a little bit about what happened in Bliss. So I had the 6th, 7th, and 8th, and we had a few older kids who were in high school. And the first day of VBS was really challenging because the kids were really good at soccer, like way better than I ever could be. And they were bored with the lesson. And so I ended up asking God, why did you put me in this group? This group seems to not really like me at all. And so I was kind of telling God how things should be. I'm like, I should have been like in a younger group where they respect me. But throughout the week, there was a huge shift in the kids. We had 3 kids in our group who came to know Christ. And they at the beginning of the week, they weren't answering any questions from the Bible verse. Remember, they weren't memorizing the verse and answering questions from the Bible lesson. And at the end of the week, everyone was answering questions. Everybody was saying the Bible verse. And I have never seen the harvest more ripe than I have in Bliss. And God can do amazing things, even with the attitudes people have like mine. So thank you.
We're going to pause for a moment and take the offering in just a little bit here. As you listen, you're hearing some different stories, and maybe to help put a better picture here, I guess, there was 4 teams, and that's why some kids did not care about soccer, and some kids are very good at soccer. So it was the older kids who were very good at soccer, and we had 2 older groups that really excelled and were good, and then 2 younger groups who were not so much into soccer, and that might help give you a bit more clarity there. And I'm just going to say something on behalf of Liz here. One of the girls that Liz was able to lead to Christ, her name is Iris, and just a neat situation there, because as a team we came together and Liz shared about her. And we prayed that night for Iris, and we asked God that he would do wonderful things and open up her heart. And it was neat because as the week went on, we saw the next day her heart more open. And then I think I'm not sure if it was Thursday. Wednesday, we saw that she came to place her faith in Christ. And that was so cool, such an answer to prayer. We can't ask. We can always ask God. We don't know how God is going to respond to a request, but what a great thing when we know that God is already rooting for us and wants this just as much as we do. And what a cool thing. And then Luke West back there. Sometimes we're planting seeds. All right, continue planting seeds. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for the work in Bliss, and I want to just stop and ask that you would continue to be at work in the community there and in the church family there. The good things that took place a week ago, may they continue on. Seeds that were sown, would you continue to water them? You are the one that is in charge of all this, and use us as people to plant seeds, to water, but you're the one that makes things grow. And so we're asking that you would continue to do your work there. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We'll have the guys come for the evening offering.
Hello. 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 There we go. My name is Ty Bruin, and I have a bit of a story. So if you don't know me, you probably should know that I have a voice that can project like crazy, as my team will tell you. So if it was, hey guys, it's time to go to the soccer session now, I'd be like, hey guys, let's go! Something like that. So because of my projecting voice, I find that I love to have control over everything that's going on. And now that was a problem coming into this missions trip, because the more I wanted control over it, the more I realized I don't. It started out me being very nervous because I had no idea what to expect. I had no control over what was about to happen. I didn't know how many kids we were going to have. I didn't know what to expect from the kids. So I was very nervous. So the story begins with a little conflict there. Sunday after the pouring rain and the wind, and then it became sunny. Thanks a lot, Idaho. We had time to go canvass the neighborhood. So we're about done with canvassing, and we get to this end of the road, and there's a little dirt path that's like going up the hill a little ways, and it leads to this area that's just like full of broken down machinery, and there's like trailers and trucks and random stuff all floating around up there. I go, hey Cole, let's go check this out. I was like, I'm adventurous. So nobody else wanted to go. Cole and I did. Everybody follows closely behind, scared. We get up to the top, and it's exactly what I thought it would be. There's lots of broken down stuff. But then at the end, there's a trailer. And sure enough, it's got that little like aluminum porch thing that's sticking out. So I'm like, oh yeah, somebody lives here. It's got a little like flowered chair sitting outside. I go up to the door, look at Cole. Cole looks at me. I'm like, here we go. I knock on it. And almost immediately hear somebody get up, and I'm like, if I was scared actually at this moment, because I was like, I don't know who's in here. I don't know why I'm doing this. Out of the smoky interior of this trailer emerges this very dirty man. He comes out and says, so, you come here to proselytize to me? Yes. So after a short introduction of who we were, why we were in town, and what we were doing, we got to listen to a half-an-hour sermon about how we should be doing our soccer camp from, well, no, it was half an hour until you guys showed up, but yeah, it got good from there. And I'm conservative. I don't like to waste time. So when he was talking, I was like, maybe I can get something out of this. I don't know. And one of the things that he said was, this soccer camp is not your soccer camp. This is God's soccer camp. And you need to be in prayer about this soccer camp every single day. You need to get down on your knees and just pray, because you're not in control over it. I was like, oh, dang. I was like, he's speaking to me right now. And yeah, so what, 20 minutes later after he said that, then finally Pastor Nate and Mr. West show up, and it's another half an hour of monologue. But what I learned from that experience was that even when you're least expecting it, God's still going to talk to you. And he talked to me right then. And from then on, I realized this is not my camp. I should be in prayer about this. And so I just started to pray. And I just prayed for the kids. I prayed that we would get lots of numbers, and that he would just empower me to do what he called me to do. And he did, and I'm very thankful for it. So thank you all for all of your prayers. It was a very great mission trip. It was great for me, and it was great for the community that we impacted.
Lower it. So the biggest challenge that I faced in Bliss was actually like the kids themselves. And I was with K through first, and all of you have heard they were totally crazy. And yeah, anyone who's worked that age group probably already knows that themselves. And yeah, these kids were crazy. They wouldn't sit still. Anything that me or my kid would say would go like right over their heads. And even, it was really funny, we were doing a soccer camp and they wouldn't play soccer. They refused. It was pretty frustrating. I was really frustrated with these kids because I was really excited to like try and make an impact. And it was really hard because like even through all my frustrations, I mean, I just really wanted to like love these kids and tell them they were valued. And most importantly, I wanted them to know like about God and like the truth about him. And so on Tuesday, I taught the lesson. That was our second day of EBS, and the kids would not sit still. They wouldn't look at me. They wouldn't like. I can't describe how crazy they were. It was like they were on steroids. And so I was really disheartened from that. It was really hard for me to not feel like I made an impact. So on Wednesday, I was still really low. I just didn't feel it. I was like, well, why am I here if these kids aren't going to listen? And on Thursday, magical Thursday, Pastor Nate, when he gave us this free time, I really changed my heart. Just talking to God, I felt so renewed, and it changed my attitude. Like I did a 180, and I was like, I'm here for these kids. I am going to do whatever I can to love them and make them feel loved. So yeah, my biggest challenge was these kids, but it was also the most rewarding. Because even through all of it, even though I didn't feel like I made a difference, when Tyler would ask questions at the end of it, they were able to raise their hand to all the questions, and it was just so amazing. So even through all my frustrations, it was really neat to see that God was actually at work. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Kara. I was working with the second and third grade group, so I want to talk about two of the kids. The first one is Samantha, and Joe talked about her a little bit. And on Thursday, when we shared the wordless book, she was like kind of interested, but it was more of a let's talk about it tomorrow thing. So I was like, yeah, okay, let's see if we actually talk about it tomorrow. But then she came into lunch and she had like a scrape on her knee, and it looked like it hadn't been cleaned. So I was like, okay, let's just clean it up and put a Band-Aid on it. And God kind of put on my heart, like, this is an opportunity for you to talk to her again about the wordless book. And so kind of while I was trying to clean it up, I was talking to her about it. And then I asked her, like, do you want to accept Christ into your heart? And she said no, and one of her reasons were that she was scared. So I don't remember exactly what I said. It was like a week ago, and I'm real tired. But even though she didn't accept Christ while we were there, I still think that we planted a seed, and I really think that that was an opportunity given by God specifically to share that with her. And then the other little kid that I wanted to talk about was a boy named Johnny in our group, not Johnny Dressel. He and I kind of really bonded. He was like this crazy little kid, and it was so fun to hang out with him. He really impacted my life. It was just really fun to hang out with him, and it was really cool when we said goodbye on Friday to see that I had impacted his life too. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks. My name's Tyler Ferguson, and I had the privilege of being Mega on this trip, who was the sports camp mascot. And this allowed me to float from group to group to observe and help and give candy to the kids to rile them up for these guys. But before we left on our trip, we had 4 meetings to help prepare. And no matter how many meetings you have, you never really feel fully prepared. And I was really curious to see how prepared we actually were when we got there. But as I went from group to group, I was able to listen to some of these guys teach. I wasn't able to make it to everyone's lesson. But I was really amazed at how well they did. I could definitely see Christ's love shine through everyone on this trip, and Christ's work in the children's lives as they were being taught. And we prayed specifically that God would work in the kids' hearts ahead of time. And I could really see the kids were really hungry for truth and for love. And I really feel like that's why this mission trip was so effective, is because of the love that they had for the children and the prayer that went into this trip. So I wanted to thank God for all the work that he did in and through us. Thank all you guys for your hard work and service, and thank all of you guys for praying for us along the way.
So my challenge was actually after we got back to Oregon, and it was jealousy. So when I was told before we went that I was going to be helping with the middle schoolers, I was a little bit upset in a way because middle schoolers take longer to open up to you and to like get to know you and talk to you about things. And on the first day when we got there, we actually had a couple high schoolers too, but they all hung out with each other, and a couple of kids opened up and were like talking with us and everything, but a lot of them went by themselves and didn't really talk to us much. I'm going to skip the whole week. So by the last day, they really started opening up, and they started doing the motions to the songs and singing, which they wouldn't do at the beginning of the week, like Mrs. West said. And when I got home, I was keeping in contact with some of them. I had their numbers and was texting some of them, and they wanted to talk with other staff members, other leaders from other groups that weren't in the middle school. And I was kind of, in some ways, offended because I was one of the people, not me, just me, but like the staff members who were helping in the middle school. We were the people who got them to trust our group and open up and want to talk to us. And when they said they want to talk to other people, I was kind of hurt because I was thinking, if they want to talk about the Lord or something, I want them to talk to me about it. And I want to be the person who can help them when I was the one who spent so much time invested in them along with my team. And eventually I realized that God can work through anyone. It's not just me, even though I was the one who was helping them over the week. They can go to anyone on our team, and hopefully we can all give the answers that they need. And just as long as they seek a Christian friend and go to a Christian to get their answers and know the scriptures, that's really all that matters. I wasn't really expecting to learn anything after the week, but I'm glad I did, because I now know that I can still not just learn on the trip, but learn after it. And hopefully these kids will keep learning from now on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Maddie, and I wanted to share about one of my challenges during this trip for me, but in the end, how God reminded me to trust in Him and what He wanted me to know. So I was hanging out with this little girl most of the week, and she was in our 2nd and 3rd grade group, and on Thursday, she wasn't feeling very good. So I took her inside, and she was laying down, and I sat by her, and I was getting nervous because the wordless book and the lesson were going on at that time, and I was panicking because I knew she wouldn't be able to hear it. So I tried to ask her every few minutes if she was feeling better, but she always said she didn't feel better, and she wasn't really interested in the lesson. And so I was thinking maybe God has different plans for me, and He wants me to share the wordless book with her tomorrow, separately from the group. So I prepared and felt like that's what God wanted me to do. But then the next day came, and as soon as she got there, she felt sick and wanted to go home. And so she ended up going home without hearing the wordless book. And so I was really upset and confused because God didn't let me share it with her. But then He reminded me that I need to trust in Him and His timing and not my timing, and let Him handle the situation. And so there's a couple of verses that I was thinking that really went along with this and helped me to process everything that I'd been thinking about. And one of them is Isaiah 55, 8-9. And it says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." And the other one is Hebrews 11:1. And sorry, let me find it. It says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance in what we do not see." So then that reminded me that beyond this trip, God can still work in her heart, even if I'm not the one that will lead her to Christ. And hopefully I still planted seeds in us as a group. But anyway, yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Addie, and I was part of the 6th, 7th, 8th grade group, and some high schoolers were in it too. I was honestly kind of nervous preparing for this mission trip compared to last year. Last year was a great experience, and we all knew that we would be really busy during it, which really helped me. And that's why this year I was nervous, because we wouldn't be as busy, and and I was working with older kids, and I've never worked with older kids, and the kids were really good at soccer. But the first day I was doing the memory verse, and most kids didn't really want to participate or get into it, but Olivia Enns volunteered first, and then Olivia Teague did too, and that got the kids into it and memorizing and everything. And I didn't feel as nervous after that, because I realized that I wasn't going through this week alone. I had God by my side, and I also had my leader helpers. They were there too, because it didn't matter how I felt when I was doing it. All mattered was that I was teaching them about God, and I was showing Christ in me to them. I have some verses. The one who is in you is greater than the one who is in the world. 1 John 4:4. And John 3:30. He must become greater, I must become less. And forgetting what I felt during it, or just showing God's love for these kids and what his plan for them. Thank you.
So I didn't realize I actually had to talk today until this morning. And then all day I've been thinking about, what am I going to say? What can I say? Because everybody has these stories about kids they've impacted, or kids that they've had come to Christ for and with them. And for me, my biggest struggle is just remembering that even if I don't personally get a kid to come to Christ through me, that there is always going to be somebody after me that's going to help continue them along the process and help them continue to grow in Christ, that he's not on his own. The kid has somebody after me. The kid has their parents. And for me, one of my favorite moments was, we had this little boy, his name was Jasper, and he was technically too young to go to the VBS, but he still did. And his mom said that he sings nonstop. She told us that before he even came to our group. Well, I didn't realize how much nonstop was. We couldn't get him to stop singing. And, but one of the times, the first day, he was in the bathroom, and we could hear him screaming, "I am the muscle man," but he was singing it at the same time. And his mom said that at home during bath time, that the only thing he kept singing were the VBS songs, but we could not get him to sing them during VBS. And by the end of the week, he had his own dance routine and everything made up for him. And then I got sick on the second day, and so did one of our teammates. And my team really stepped up and took over for us, so they kind of had our backs there, and we didn't have to worry about it. Me and Alyssa Harristack both got heat stroke, and we did not feel good. We were done. And my team just handled it like it was nothing. They just kind of went by like it was easy for them.
Thank you for coming out tonight. We're almost to the end, just a few more to go. You're troopers. I know it's 7 o'clock, but there's ice cream, so you can do it. Okay, so I'm going to start with a few PSs that I wanted to share as I was hearing these guys share. Just a little bit about where we slept. I don't think that has been mentioned. All of the guys slept in the church. The intention was they would sleep in the basement, but then they discovered the pews upstairs. So all the guys were upstairs in the pews, and Nathan and John West and Carson were in the basement, and they got some good sleep. I think everyone got some sleep. And the girls were all hosted by a lady named Vicky, and she was the widow of the previous pastor who was at this church. And she and her husband had built this really beautiful large house with the intentions of being able to use it for ministry. And so we flooded her basement. We might have been a little more than she was counting on, but we all had a learning curve, and I think we figured it out by the end of the week. And she was really gracious to let us be in her home. And then also the high school allowed us to use their locker rooms to shower, because the church didn't have any showers, and Vicky had one shower. And that was really cool that the school was willing to let us. Half the showers worked most of the time. So it worked better than one shower. So that's just a little bit about how we stayed clean and got some sleep. Okay, another PS is in the slideshow at the end, you'll see a picture of the Marlboro man on a tractor. That's the guy that Ty talked to. So look for him in the slideshow. His name's Carl. We've talked about the population of Bliss being 318, and I talked to the pastor's wife. They're the interim pastors there right now, and she said that population sign has not been changed in many, many years, and it's probably 318 people if you include all the goats and the dogs. So really, the population is not 318. She says they're being very generous, and so in that, we had over 50 children come through camp that week, which was really exciting when you think percentage-wise. And they were not all from Bliss. There was little towns nearby that they come from, but I think every child in Bliss came to that camp that week. It was really fun to see. We had talked about how, before we went on the trip, we talked about how Bliss was 80% Hispanic in the community. And I would say that, yes, it's 80% Hispanic in the community, but Bliss Community Church is probably 100% Caucasian. Like, the community is not reflected in the church. Most people that come to Bliss Community Church come from outside of Bliss because they were raised there, or they have family there, or they just like the church, and they've come from outside towns into the church. So really pray for Bliss Community Church. They're waiting for a full-time pastor, and the heart of that church is that they'll have a pastor that has a passion for the community and the church, and that this pastor will be able to reach the cultural divide and bring in people of all ethnicities into the church that will serve their own town. That's a huge desire for Bliss Community Church. Okay, so now what I really wanted to share. Okay, so I played a few roles on this trip. I went as a driver, I was a housekeeper, a cook, a nurse. I got to be a photographer, that was really fun. I was a nutritionist. I helped with registration for the soccer camp. I got to be a counselor and a therapist a couple nights. And I also got to be a peacemaker because of those previous jobs. And then I was a mom. The role that I enjoyed the most, though, was being the role of observer. And I got to watch these high school students just love really well. And I enjoyed that a lot. I saw our teens loving on children that others from outside communities view as trash. I got to see these students making friends with students their own age. That one of the moms said, if you knew these kids' stories, you wouldn't be talking to them. But we didn't know their stories, so we didn't have to worry about that. We got to know their stories and loved them anyways. Nathan worked with a lady named Lori. She was our liaison with the church, and I got to meet her when we got there, and she asked if our church has any safety procedures for, like, taking kids to bathrooms or that kind of thing. And I said, well, what does your church do? We would like to do what you do. And they had a rule, 2 children and 2 teenagers at the same time to use a bathroom, just to keep everyone fine and safe. And so I said, well, do you have any rules about piggyback rides or sitting on laps? Because sometimes you're not allowed to do that. And she looked at me and she said, if you could get these kids to climb on their laps or give them piggyback rides, that would be amazing. She said, I don't think it will happen. Don't expect it. She said, we have been serving these families hot lunch after school every Friday. The kids and the moms will come every Friday for 2 years, and some of them will still not make eye contact with us. So she said, don't expect that to happen with this group. But if it can, that'd be great. Friday, Pastor Bob joined us for our debriefing time. And he just said, I wrote it down. He said, let's see, we've been around these kids quite a bit lately, and to see how you've changed their lives in just a week is amazing. Those kids were all over our students by day 2. It was pretty cool. Okay, so so I got to see our students loving on kids just really well. I saw high school guys being really flexible to get up early or stay up late so the girls could shower. There was a brother that planned a surprise birthday party for his sister. He didn't want her to miss out on some birthday love. I just saw our students really doing a great job, loving each other sacrificially. I saw Jesus in these students and how they loved without prejudice. and they gave sacrificially. And you can be really proud of how these students represented Jesus to the town of Bliss. And some advice for you to take as you go home that I heard from Vicky, who we stayed with. If a goat follows you home, just make sure it stays on this side of the railroad tracks.
Well, that's about right. My name's TJ Cross. I'm gonna find my page here. I had the privilege of working with the 6th, 7th, and 8th, and 9th, and 10th graders. We had a couple high schoolers that joined us, and it was a great time. They really made our scrimmages competitive, and they were showing us soccer players, me and Johnny, they were showing us up. So yeah, I feel like for me this year, coming into the missions trip, I've felt probably the least prepared, which was kind of discouraging going in because, you know, we're here on Sunday evening and I'm thinking towards Monday and what am I going to do? Even though I spent the previous 2 weeks preparing what I was going to do at the camp, I still had no idea what it was going to look like and what to expect from the kids we were going to be ministering to. So I have, you know, Monday morning comes, kids are coming in and they're registering, they're going downstairs for lunch, and I'm sitting in a corner just having these questions running through my head. You know, how many kids will we have if we have any? How will my plan work with the ability of the kids? Well, you know, will they even be able to do what I'm having them do, or will it just be too easy for them? And how will the kids respond to instruction? I guess that was a big one for me because in the, you know, previous missions trips, you have in the debriefing, you always have people talking about, oh, watch out for this kid, you know, this kid's a handful, and you know, it's just lots of unknowns going in. So yeah, but now that we're home, you know, I'm looking back on all these fears and it's kind of hitting me where, you know, I had no right to be having these fears because God was with us. They were irrational fears. So instead of, you know, cowering in a corner, I should have been out there reaching out to the kids. And I got to thank my team. They stepped up and they were doing a great job reaching out to them while I was in the corner. But by Tuesday, I was doing all right. But yeah, just after the fact, you know, kind of to answer the questions that were running through my head, you know, how many kids we had. In my group alone, by the end of the week, we had seen 16 kids in our group alone out of the 50 that showed up. And how my plans would work with them, I didn't even really use them. Kind of just, I would think about what we would do maybe while someone else was giving the lesson or something, and I didn't even bother using what I had spent 2 weeks to prepare. And probably the one thing that I thought was just, it just really blew my mind. I was wondering how they would respond to the instruction. And, you know, these are middle school kids. I was imagining rowdy, unattentive, unmanageable kids, but they were very, very respectful, very attentive, and it was really a lot of fun to work with them. Yeah, they were so much fun, you know, leaving. I was just feeling that, you know, I'm just getting to know the kids now, you know, and now we're leaving, and, you know, I just have this yearning to go back now. So I would say the biggest lesson that I learned from this trip is that I have no need to worry when God is on my side. Let's see, Lindsay Jordan mentioned earlier, Matthew 6:25-34. I feel like that's probably a passage that really hits home to me now that we're home. If anybody needs a refresher about that, that's during the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus is talking about worrying. So read a little bit out of that. Let's see. So starting verse 25. Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of any more value than they? Which of you by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature? And then going down to the end of the section, verse 34. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble.
Hello, I'm Jonathan, and I got to work with the middle schoolers during the week of the missions trip. So I'm going to share what I was challenged throughout the week, and what that was the challenge of not trusting that God would work through me. And that challenge developed after the first day, because we had to work with middle schoolers, and after that, during the Bible lesson and the memory verse activity, they really did not listen. They kind of, when it came to questions, we had to pick on the leaders because none of them wanted to do it. Like Diego, first day, didn't want to do it. We asked him if he wanted to do it. All he had to do was pick a word, and somebody had to go in, and he'd pick the word, and then the person would come back in the room. They'd say the verse, and he would try to guess which word was picked that we didn't say. And so I didn't think that God could work through me on this missions trip, but that really changed after Wednesday, when I'd like to give credit to Lizzie for leading one of the kids to the Lord. And that really impacted me. And then at the end of the week, I looked back on that week and I thought, I was talking to God. I'm like, you did it. You changed, because led three kids to the Lord. And I think Jose and Bronson almost left in tears when they left us during the singing. And after that, I've been repeating a verse to myself, which was Philippians 4:13, which says, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. And I hope that this is a challenge that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Coach Farron, and I got my first soccer ball last week. This is from a 5-year-old boy named Lucas, who Mrs. West mentioned. He even autographed it for me and drew some hearts on it, and then he started stabbing it with a Sharpie and chanting, "Soccer camp! Soccer camp." I'm not sure if that was a compliment or not, but I'll take it that way. One of the best moments during mission trip was when Lucas told me he wanted me to keep this ball, even though it technically wasn't his to give. So thank you for letting me keep this, Pastor Nate. When Lucas first showed up on Monday morning, I mentally described him as sullen and shy. But just in that first day, I watched him begin to open up and enjoy himself, especially during the time we spent outside, during which we played a lot more duck, duck, goose than soccer. It felt easy for me to connect with him because of how reserved he was in big groups, but how fun-loving and energetic he was in a one-on-one setting. In that way, he reminded me of my own little brother, so I had a pretty good idea of how to coax him out of his shell. It was really exciting to me to see him grow in confidence and joy throughout the week, and I even heard him sing once. Lucas provided many of the best parts of the trip for me, but also one of the saddest. On Friday, I shared the Wordless book and asked if any of the kids would like to pray and accept Jesus as their Savior. I was surprised to see my shy little friend raise his hand, but I went ahead and asked if he was ready to pray with me right away. His response was a very quiet, "No." So I suggested we do it a little later. After we'd had some games and it had been a while, I asked him again if he was ready to pray. Same response. Just before he headed home, I asked a third time if he would like to pray, and again he said that he didn't want to. I was really disappointed. But I know that God doesn't need me there to lead Lucas to him. My job is simply to pray and also to ask you guys to pray as well. Hope that I planted good seeds and trust that God will make them grow. After a week of soccer camp, I still know next to nothing about soccer, but I will always treasure this ball as a reminder of the challenges and blessings of our time in Bliss and of the opportunity I have to pray for those kids. Who knows, maybe someday I'll even learn to use this thing. Thank you.
All right, so I don't have a whole lot to say. but it's short and sweet, and I'll get my point across hopefully. So as TJ said, I can kind of relate. The very beginning, like, you know, the weeks in preparation, I didn't feel like we were very prepared. Things went by really fast, and I just kind of, you know, woke up realizing, wow, you know, we're already here, we're already starting, and I don't quite know what to expect. And that a lot of that put into play how I felt. I was being challenged. Like, there wouldn't be much for us to do. Like, I had low expectations because of how small the town was and what I already knew about it. But it wasn't until a couple of days into the trip that I realized how much opportunity there was for us in that little town, and how much change and impact we could make. Like, right when the first day of soccer camp had started, like, there were 57 kids that showed up that week. Not all of them the first day, but I got curious on Friday and counted how many registration forms we had, and like 57 kids was a lot more than I had expected. But that was really neat, and I felt way more comfortable to share the love of Christ with them, especially because like almost all of them accepted us right away. Like, as Kelsey said, we weren't going to expect that they were going to be climbing over us, and, you know, they would kind of do their own thing, but it was like right away that they were appreciative of us being there, no matter how small they were. And that made it really comfortable to share with them. I also want to talk about the last couple mission trips in comparison to this one. They were really good, but I don't feel like we had as much of a connection with the kids those years as this year. And like, coming out of the week, I realized that I was like, wow, you know, once these kids connect with us, it's so much easier to share with them. And I think we made a huge impact, and it'd be nice to make it back sometime. There's actually plans for the college group to go back and do something maybe soon. But something I want to leave you with that I thought about is, no matter how big or small the community is, a difference is a difference, and that's always worth the effort. Thank you.
That's why we go on mission trips. That's why we do it. We're going to show a video right now, and thank you for hanging out here with us. I know it's going late, but I hope that you enjoy. If you need to stand up and stretch, you're welcome to do that. We'll get this video going right now.